It's time for Ask Dale Anything, the show that answers your most perplexing questions with profound answers from one of the top transformational teachers and leaders on the planet, Dale Halloway. I'm your host, Mickey Manning, Dale's left-hand person, as I like to call it, and I've never heard a question that he can't answer. He's been doing this for over 40 years now, and he truly has an answer that's profound and helpful on any topic. So with that, let's get into today's question. Nancy O'Connell sent this in to us. So Nancy asks, this is a great question too. Let me preface this by saying we have addressed this topic before, but I'm going to actually read her entire thing about what she wrote in because I think she's articulating what so many of us are experiencing with resistance around wearing a mask. So Nancy says, I really need help with the masking. I don't know if I'm in resistance towards wearing a mask or if seeing everyone masked activates the resistance. This is what happens when I go into a store and see everyone masked. I can feel my heart and the energy in my body constrict to the point of being painful. Seeing innocent children as well as the adults hiding their beautiful faces is extremely painful. My coping mechanism is to avoid going out and into places that require you to be masked. This is not a good strategy because I'm a very social being and I like being out amongst people. I can also feel the level of fear in the store. I find myself staying home more and more so that I can remain mask-free. Maybe I can see what the agenda behind the masking of society is, and I'm not on board with it. I would greatly appreciate Dale's wisdom on the masking. Maybe he has addressed this before I came to the Elevate program, but it may be worth another go-around since now school is starting and the students and staff are required to be masked. I loved my job as a substitute teacher, but as of this writing, I am not returning to the classroom in September. I'm choosing to not participate in all the new requirements. Can you ask Dale to speak on this topic?
Very good. Well, I'm glad you did. And hi, Nancy. And I do remember you from long ago as well. I just wanted you to know that. And this is a great question. Actually, it's multi-layered. There's, at least 4 different places we can go in exploring this particular question around the masks. So, on one level, the masks become something that gets us to be conditioned well, to be conditioned around this program. It's been a long time on the planet where we, from those that want that power over, we are viewed as you could say either numbers. In fact, in some cases, we are worth X number of dollars to this entity, so to speak. But in addition to that, we have been often viewed as like herd or like a herd, like a cattle herd or a sheep herd, where we can be herded like sheep, we can be herded like cattle. And so this is just on one level to be able to have demonstrated that just think about this for a moment, how the majority of people right now on the planet have pretty much now know that if they want to go out and be in the public in pretty much any way, shape, or form now, they are required to wear a mask. And if they don't wear a mask, all they got to do is walk into a business establishment, and now it's at the place where you'll be asked to leave the business establishment. It's either that or you wear the mask. So again, all part of that programming, all part of that conditioning. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just an is thing. That's been going on for a long time. So, but I bring that up because I do know I've had this now with a couple of other people who that's been their unconscious resistance to wearing the mask, as in terms of what we discovered as I worked with them, is that they had a real issue with wearing this mask because unconsciously they were in some state of remembrance that this is being used to once again to show who has the power. that no, I created this, and now you're going to follow exactly what I created here. And basically, you have no free will. So if you're going to live on this planet, if you're going to live in this community, if you're going to live in this society, then you're going to do as I say you're going to do, so to speak. And so a couple of them, or at least in my sphere, that had an issue, and that was their issue around this. Now it got cleared, and now they're okay, meaning they can still go out and wear the mask, and they don't have the same kind of reaction internally to the mask because they were able to get to what was going on inside of them that was getting activated just by this idea that, wait a minute, why are we being told to wear this mask? And now we pretty much everywhere we have to go, we wear the mask. So that's one. Two, yes, you're right on the smile. The smile now gets hidden, so to speak, and yet that's not the complete truth because, the smile, as beautiful as it is and as unique as it is to each individual, that the smile itself is being hidden behind the mask. But you can see when the person's smiling, their eyes get bigger, sometimes brighter, maybe the top of their cheeks, you can still see above the mask line. You can see how it starts to radiate. You can tell that they're smiling. I know even sometimes when I'm out and I have my mask on as well, right? And I'll often make a comment with somebody where I make eye contact and I'll say something like, I can see your smile. And right away they just start to laugh, right? But it lightens it up. But the truth is I can see their smile. And I'm not just talking about psychically. I can see their smile because I see it through their eyes. So I've just gone to a different place. But there are people that can get really down on this because, we have an appreciation for someone else's smile when we're looking, especially children, right? I totally agree. When you see a child smile, I mean, that in itself is just a precious moment, especially when you're really awake in that moment and you get to take in that just beautiful energy of the child who just simply smiling. Or better yet, when you're smiling, sometimes it does something wonderful to you on the inside as well. So that could be going on there. Then if we go deeper to that around either, the smile being hidden from us, so now we're resisting to that because it's something we really appreciate, or possibly the idea of wearing the mask because there's this feeling like we're being controlled again, and we're being told we have to do this in order to interact with everybody. And so there might be an unconscious resistance towards that the person's now dealing with on the inside. And again, from a transformational standpoint, this is where we ultimately want to go. We want to turn this into a transformational opportunity for ourselves individually. So if I'm bothered by the mask, right, then why am I bothered by the mask? Because obviously if I want to go to the grocery store or the supermarket, or if I want to go and hang out in a nice restaurant with somebody and have dinner, at least walking up to the table, I'm going to have to wear that mask or I don't get to the table. It's just, that's the bottom line. So it behooves me to take whatever's going on within me, that of which is being activated within me, just by the act of wearing the mask, and really work with that activated energy so that, and I'll know when I've worked through because then I'm a little calmer, or I calm down, I'm back in my center again, I'm able to use the mask, but I'm able to use the mask in a way where I get to stay conscious. I'm able to use the mask so I know that I'm very clear on what I want here. I'm very clear on my intention. I want to go have dinner with a friend or a family member or a small group of people. And so I know I need to wear the mask to get to that table. And once we start eating, then I can take the mask off. That's all so-called the state the state law now, so to speak. So I need to comply to that in order to get to the dinner table. I know that. So for me to turn this into a transformational opportunity, so I can walk in not feeling stressed because I have to wear a mask, I'm walking in because I've used it as an opportunity to clear something that got activated from within me, all because I need to wear the mask, so to speak, or I'm being told that I need to wear this mask. And then the bottom line is, and I still get to go and have dinner with my friends or family and have a nice meal together and socialize and connect and have all that comes out of that to be able to experience. So, because I don't want to shut myself down either. I don't want to shut myself down. It's like some of the people in our team have children and some of the people that I mentor on a more regular basis, they have children. And the last thing what we don't want is to not have them go to school. We don't want them to stop their learning. Because quite frankly, there's no reason for that. The only reason to stop their learning, because there's something else going on. There's another part of the story we haven't been told yet. We will be. Again, that's perhaps part of what's going to be revealed in terms of that of which has been hidden from us. And so, but between now and then, we want to learn how to work with it so that we can still get our child back online with learning, because it's beneficial to their brain development. It's beneficial for their cognitive skills, all kinds of things. It actually supports them in their developmental process. So we want to remember this. So even though that might be used for some other reason, let's say, but we want to remember, okay, what's really going on here, what's really important here, and then how can we better work with this so that this doesn't have to get to us. It doesn't have to eat at us. We work with it, right? So that's more the transformational opportunity piece. Lastly, where I was going to go, this is a much deeper place. This idea of hiding something that's so unique to us. You know, there are no two smiles that are like. There's no handprints. There's no two handprints that are exactly alike. There's no thumbprints that are exactly like on the planet, right? This is our unique soul's blueprint. It's unique to you as an individual soul in relation to God, in relation to your own God self. This is something that is incredibly significant. And so, but in that, the smile also represents that as well. The smile is something that's very unique to that individual in so many different ways. And so the mask in this context is there. Now, this is more on the spiritual level. It's showing us that something's been hidden from us. And more specifically, perhaps our true self, our authentic self, or maybe it's an aspect of our authentic self that's been hidden from us. And perhaps it's been hidden from us on purpose for a while. But clearly, this idea of the mask. So, you know, when somebody's coming at me with something that's negative, when somebody's coming at me with something where they are attempting to control me, right? I want to recognize what that is, and I want to recognize where it's coming from. And because I'm not interested in creating karma for myself, I'm not going to go and destroy them. Rather, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that energy. I'm going to use that energy in a way, first and foremost, where can I use it to further my transformation? Where can I use it to further accelerate or deepen my growth? Where can I use it to deepen my connection or strengthen my connection to my soul? That's the first place. Once I recognize what it is and who it's coming from and why it's coming from them. In other words, their motive, whatever it is that they're up to. And so, but then I'm going to turn it. And as I start to turn it, that in itself begins to disarm the game. Now, if they're really focused on me, this is going to be very upsetting to them. They're never going to know what it is that I've done, but they're going to get upset. And what that means is they're possibly going to come in and try even harder. And when they come in to try harder, that more than likely is when they make the big mistake. And somehow, some way, they shoot themselves in their own foot. Somehow, some way, they bring something upon themselves that ends up being very heavy to them. And so, and yet, I haven't touched them. I haven't touched them. I've sent them no ill will at all. I don't even pray to have them removed off the planet. In fact, I do the complete opposite. You know, I don't do anything that's negative towards them at all. And yet what they're doing can be intense. It can be very, very intense and sometimes downright ugly and very controlling and even manipulative and aggressive and assertive and ugly and sometimes even hurtful. Sometimes it even stings. It hurts. And when you approach it the way that I just suggested here, what happens now, that energy that's being sent your way is actually being utilized in a way that becomes productive, at least for you. So in this case, with the mask, is recognizing that the mask, part of why it's there, not the whole, But part of why it's there is that what we're really to be looking at, Nancy, we're to be looking at where we're at in relation to recognizing our truest self, our most authentic self. Who are we? And more specifically, what part of ourselves at the level of our truth, at the level of our authenticity, might it be that we're still hiding? That we literally have created a mask. Again, going back to that storyline, those concocted storylines. Not all of them, but some of those concocted storylines are literally designed to create a mask. In fact, in Being Called to Change, there's a part in the book where I talk about the ego and the personality, or I write about it, and I talk about we hide behind these masks. Well, those masks are created. They're all self-created because we're using that mask. It's more energetic, mind you, where we start to put on this show. We start to put on this act, and it's an act. It's a show. It's false. It's not real. It's inauthentic, where we're acting like someone that we're not, or we're acting like someone that we think we need to be when in fact we don't need to be that at all anymore. At all. All because that's our mask. We don't want the other, whoever the other is, to see the truth, to see maybe where we're really at, or maybe even where we perceive we're really at. We're hiding something. We're hiding behind something. So at that level, it's a much deeper level or a higher level, however you want to look at it, is another reason for the mask, that we're to be going inside and looking at what is it we've been hiding behind. What is it we've been possibly hiding from ourselves? What is it we possibly haven't even connected to yet with regard to a part of our authentic self? In other words, whatever that is, then there will be a play, an act of inauthenticity. Inauthenticity. This is where we act out in an inauthentic way. That's where we're hiding behind a mask, a self-created energetic mask. Maybe you can't see it with your physical eye. Maybe you can. Maybe you can as you get really wise to this, because you've really dealt with your own masks, your own energetic masks. In other words, you've transformed them. You've cleared them up. You let them unwind out of you, uncoil out of you, you see. And so that could be another reason why we're activated or irritated by wearing the mask. Now, that's a much deeper level, but most certainly that could be happening for us as well. So, and if it is, you want to take full advantage of it, or at least that's my recommendation, to take full advantage of it for the purpose I said, because all of a sudden now it becomes 100% a transformational opportunity that's literally knocking on our door. It's like our soul. It's like our soul is like knocking on our front door. Hey, Nancy, I'm here. I'm ready for this. Are you? Come on, we can do this. We can do this. We can do this. There's a whole nother part of us, as in the authentic part of us, that's just waiting to be revealed. It's waiting to be discovered. It's waiting to be reclaimed. However, none of that can happen until we remove the mask that we've been hiding behind, that energetic mask. So hopefully at least some of that helps.
I know it helped me, Dale. And everyone on here. I actually asked Nancy, and she hasn't replied yet. So, Nancy, if you do have a follow-up question that you want to come on and ask Dale, please let me know, and I'll bring you on here real quick. But just speaking to that before we move on, my son really has a challenge when I wear a thin mask, and he just has it in his mind that we need like those, K95 masks, and it's got to be super protected. And he is so worried for me that I'm going to get corona because I don't have on this crazy thick mask. So that's a challenge when his dad and I view this so differently.
Yeah, well, it can be, and I'm sure there's other couples or other families that are experiencing something similar in that regard, where we see this thing differently, we perceive this thing differently. Because again, the broadcast that's coming from the collective is all the same. right? But in that broadcast, on an individual ego level or personality level, we pick it up differently. Depending on what's going on with our ego, depending on how much our ego controls our life or our personality influences our life in this regard, determines how you perceive things. And so you could have a husband or wife or even an ex, as in, the parent, the other parent to that of your offspring, your children, who clearly sees it differently than you do. And if that's the case, then obviously there's also an opportunity in that too, transformationally wise for you. Maybe not for him, or if in the case of it's a her, but always for you. There's some kind of a transformational opportunity, and taking it to that place is always the better strategy. And then beyond that, sometimes what happens, there's a little bit of an opening that occurs to where maybe we can get a little closer to having something similar. But remember that, at the root of all this, when somebody is controlling us, the only way we can be controlled, ultimately, and have that control stick and be sustainable, is we've got to have a certain amount of fear inside of us. Fear, F-E-A-R. It's the only way it can happen. And so, as always, if you disarm all of your fear, not my fear, not your husband's fear, not your wife's fear, not your kid's fear, your fear. When you are successful and you go the distance and you really disarm or transform all of your fear, or as I sometimes say, where you become intrepid for real. Meaning, what that means is now you can come into my world, and when we're doing, say, an advanced class, and where I purposely create a foreign element on purpose for you to be able to see whether or not you still have that fear inside of you. Because that's all we have to do. All I have to do is put you in a foreign environment, an environment that you can't normally control. Because wherever there's fear, there's always some level of control. If the fear is really strong, the control is going to be equally strong, maybe even a little stronger. And so when it comes to controlling somebody in this regard, right? And those who are into controlling people, as in the controlling leaders, for those of you who have been through any of my leadership classes in the past, I take a deep, deep dive into these subjects around the controlling leader, the inspiring leader, the authentic leader, and so on and so forth. In fact, I've created a whole graph. It's more than a graph, but a graph visually around the different quadrants and ultimately where we want to go in terms of being that authentic leader. But in order to get there, quite frankly, you've got to deal with this control. And because everybody has it to some degree, some people a lot more than others, depending on your environment, your life, and your past timeline, and so on and so forth, how long you've been dealing with this for. But wherever there's a lot of control, there's always a lot of fear. Wherever there's a lot of fear, it's always easy to control those who have a lot of fear. Always. Always. And so to recognize that, those that are creating these storylines that are beyond us, so to speak, these false narratives and some of these things that we find ourselves now doing in our worlds, right? Yes, we could say that's the enemy. I'm not really crazy about that because I don't see them as the enemy. I see them as an energy. And I clearly don't give them energy at all. I see them for exactly where they are and what they are up to. And that is it. And beyond that, I might see, what the next strategy is going to be that they're about to pull the trigger on. And then, as you know, I'll bring that forward somehow, some way, in a way where I never expose anybody, and nor am I planning on exposing anybody. That's not my role here at all. But in that, if there was an enemy, if there really was an enemy here, the enemy is what I said just a few moments ago. I'm going to spell it out. You ready? Here it is. Write it down in big, bold letters. Here's the real enemy. F-E-A-R. And that enemy, if it's there, has been potentially living inside guess who? So when you learn how to do what I'm suggesting or teaching, or empowering people to do, when you learn how to do this, especially as you learn how to turn this into a lifestyle and you're doing it on a regular basis, your life is just going to change for the better. It really will. And more importantly, you'll start to move more towards your authentic self, more and more, little by little, slowly but surely. And from the perspective of soul, and most certainly the collective soul, this is what we're ready to be doing. It's exactly what we're all to be doing as a people, because there's something even bigger coming on the heels of all that, which obviously I've touched on at least a couple of times slightly. Here in the next while, I'll be touching on it in a more expansive way, just because that too is coming. That's something that we all have to look forward to. But even with that, you've got to get a handle on this. You've got to get a handle on how to better work with these energies. It's one of the reasons why we have our coaching school. Our coaching school is not just for people who want to become coaches. Everybody knows that, right? The self-coaching school is for anybody and everybody. Anybody and everybody. Anybody who wants to learn how to get better at managing your energy, how to get better at managing your life, to get better at managing what goes on inside of you, how to get better at managing and navigating through when life just shows up spontaneously, regardless of where it's coming from. Anybody who wants to get better at this, I mean, that's really what the Self-Coaching School Week is. I mean, that's the first promise. And it delivers really well. I promise you, it delivers really well. And then beyond that, for those that do want to pursue a coaching career, then obviously they can choose to do that for themselves as well. But right across the board, this particular coaching week is for anybody and everybody that wants to get better at these things that I just highlighted. It's the real deal. It will help you to move the needle forward. I don't care where you are. I don't care how far you've come down your journey, or wherever you are on your journey, how far you've come down your path, shall I say, right? Wherever you are. It will help you to move the needle significantly in the course of that week, whether you become a coach or not, even though we call it, well, that's why we call it self-coach. We used to call it coaching school for family and friends. And then recently we changed it to self-coaching, because ultimately it's bringing it back to you. It's bringing it back to you so you get better at these things. And then you get better again at these things. Then you get better again at these things. And you get better again at these things. This is a process. It's an ongoing process. It's a massive project, but it's a worthy project. It's worthy of your time. It's worthy of your intention. And it most certainly is worthy of your soul, because this is something that your soul perhaps has wanted you to do for some time, to get better at these types of things. Because as you get better at these types of things, all that does is better the positioning of your precious, magnanimous soul. How cool is that? So, of course, your soul is all over this thing. Now, your ego, different story. Your ego is going to come in there with some kind of a brilliant excuse. Brilliant excuse. Somehow this is not for me. Somehow it's not the right time. Somehow it'll be an excuse. And it'll probably be a brilliant one, because some of you have real brilliant egos. And I compliment you on that. Some of your egos are so freaking intelligent, it's incredible. It's so intelligent that they can trick you. Meaning you don't even know you're even being tricked. How about that? That's an intelligent ego. Come on, give it a little pat in the back. Ego, you are pretty freaking smart. Hey, give yourself a pat in the back too, because you helped teach it over a long period of time. So anyhow, but to recognize that, how cool would that be? To recognize when your ego is literally pulling the next trick down your sleeve to see if you can be tricked into possibly not doing something that you really are to be doing. And if that's the case, and that's your truth, then obviously you want to get to it before you pull the trigger and say, no, I'm going to go for the excuse. I'm going to go for the excuse because the excuse is my Bible. The excuse gives me the reason as to why I'm now off the hook, or the reason why I don't have to do this. And I say that jokingly because, I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many excuses I've heard over the years that all come from they never come from the soul. The soul has a completely different conversation, at least with me. Different conversation. The ego just comes up with, I would love at some point, and perhaps we will do this at some. Well, not, I know we're going to do this at some point. We're going to evolve this to where we'll have like an annual convention, and people from all around the world, as we spread this around the world, will be able to come into one place, and we'll all be able to connect and really rub shoulders and share and all that kind of cool stuff. But one of the things that I have a big vision for the soul, part of what we'll do in these types of forums. But then I also have another, what I think will be really fun from the ego's perspective as well, that we will also do, just as a way to help people in maybe a real kind of funny way to see how, quite frankly, how smart their ego is, how tricky. So when I say that tricky little devil, all of a sudden you can see, because the whole idea here is, I mean, how cool would it be for both of us to see how tricky that little devil called your ego really is inside of you? How cool would that be for both of us to be able to see that instead of just one of us? Right? Or how cool would it be when you're married and you've got this loving partnership going on, you still have the ego there? How cool would it be for both of you to be able to see the ego when it's at play? How cool would that be? So you can actually do something constructive about it instead of this thing like pretend like you don't even have one. I don't have an ego. I don't have one of those. No, it's not really. And if I do have it, it's not working right now. I've sent it off to Hawaii. It's on a vacation right now. Right? It's not even relevant. I'm free. Can't you see that? I just finished reading a whole book. Okay, good for you. I just read a whole book. Well, okay, great, Dale. That's great. And meanwhile, you could be tricked by that of your ego, and the next thing you're about to do is cause an argument with your husband or with your wife that ends up being this negative experience for the next day and a half. And okay, well, that was clever. Who created that? Who ignited that? How did that happen? You just read a good book and you completed the book. You were on top of cloud number 9, so to speak. You're on top of the mountain. You were feeling really good about yourself. You don't have an ego in that moment, right? And yet 3 hours later, there you are picking this fight, or somehow something gets instigated and you're in this unpleasant experience with your partner or with one of your children, and it's taking you down this rabbit hole, and that goes on for the next couple of days. How the heck did we get here? Ego, 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 you and your ego. Remember, your ego is not your amigo. And yet, it is your ego. And only you get to be fully responsible for your ego. You don't have the responsibility for the collective ego. That's way too much for any of us. But you do get the full responsibility for your individual ego, as we all do. All right, Mickey, well, how about you close us out?
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. And if you found Dale's teachings helpful and you want to get more of them, then you might really like his free ebook that we have for you, 12 Simple Ways to Change Your Life in 30 Days. You can download it for free at delehalloway.com/practices. That's delehalloway.com/practices. In it, you'll find 12 simple ways explained to you in exact step-by-step fashion that will cause your life to move forward in the next month. Simply choose one of the practices, any one of them, do it for 30 days straight, and you'll see a new you begin to manifest. I am not kidding. Download your free copy today at delehalloway.com/practices. Oh, and by the way, if you know anybody who might find this content helpful, please share it with them. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you next time.